Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhaled frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great.
Yes, cannabis. Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer-mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
All right, we've powered up.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue there. That pretty much describes what I was doing all last week from the weekend.
There we go. That's a perfect segue. Welcome, everyone, to Toker Talk Radio, where you're the voice of the marijuana nation. Our phone line is 971-533-7111, and we welcome back to the studio, thanks to a generous purchase at the 420 Radio Shop. Our own Brian the Red is back. Howdy,
Yay.
Brian.
Oh, so glad to have a bus pass again and be able to, move about this lovely world.
Yes. So you were telling us, you've been away for a while, so you were telling us that you were involved with retro gaming?
Well, yeah, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo is a once-a-year event, and it was awesome once again this year. We had it at the Oregon Convention Center for the second year in a row, and basically my job involved a whole lot of heavy lifting, moving around arcade machines and such.
Aha.
So, that and making sure that the Nintendos worked properly.
All right, so so I got to tell you, because I'm an old school 80s gamer, right?
I did see Ganja John there.
Well, of course Ganja John was there.
Yeah.
He was buying, a pinball machine?
Looking for a pinball machine, yeah. But
all right, so I'm an old school 80s gamer, right?
Yep.
Back in the day when you take $20 and get a few rolls of quarters, right, to be able to play a game.
Yep.
And I was never any good at the games that everybody played. Like, I was never good at Donkey Kong or Asteroids or Pac-Man.
Oh, the addictive ones.
Right, I was no good at those.
Okay.
But the obscure, weird games,
oh, yeah,
I was good at the obscure, weird games. So, for example, I was the champion of a game called Crazy Climber.
Oh,
did they have a Crazy Climber there?
Not this year, but I believe that we saw Crazy Climber 2 years ago.
If you don't know Crazy Climber, it's a video game with two joysticks that control the two arms of a guy who's climbing up a building by climbing up windowsills as people are dropping shit out the windowsills at him and shit's flying around trying to knock him off. And it required a very specific kind of rhythm to be able to play this game.
Yeah.
And I was just a master at this game. I got all the way through it. It had like 5 levels, and once you got all through 5, you won, right?
Oh, wow. Nice.
Nobody I have ever met has gotten through that. But again, few people know what the hell I'm talking about when I talk about Crazy Climber.
Yeah, we had last year the World Bubble Bobble champion there, and he maxed out the machine at the event. It's all 9s, and he was still going. It was freaking.
There was another game, a level type game, involving a kangaroo that punched things.
Oh yes,
Kango.
Is
that his name? I don't know. But I was good at that one, too.
But that one, that was an Atari game.
Nobody knew what the hell that was.
Yeah, that was an Atari game.
People in the chat room were like, Galaga, Dig Dug. Okay, so my brother...
there was like 3 Dig Dugs. There was an island of asteroids, 5 on one side with the cabaret on the end, and then Asteroids Deluxe 4 on the other side with the cabaret and then the Asteroids Deluxe table. It was freaking insane. If you love gaming, find yourself a retro gaming expo. I originally found it because I was trying to sell my video games, cartridges and crap, but... because I used to love cartridge gaming, that was my, young life. But and besides, being an all-around nerd with computers and such, it's like, what else can you call somebody who builds computers that he got out of dumpsters and is a lawyer's assistant at 14?
Nerd.
So nerd, yeah.
Joust was another one of those.
Yep, we had a Joust
games. Weird game that was unlike any other game, so I was really good at that one.
We had Joust. We had we had a great version of Donkey Kong that was a remake from I think '83, where you played as the princess and you were trying to rescue Mario. It was all pink console, and the artwork was even reversed gender-wise. So where on the original it's got a bunch of Mario heads and then the monkeys and stuff, this one had a bunch of the princess.
Huh.
So, for the girls.
Well, there you go. And Dig Dug was mentioned earlier. My brother Matt was a champion Dig Dug player. I was never very good at the Dig Dug.
Yeah, I'm more about the pinball. I loved pinball. That was one, just the motions and everything, the lights and the interaction. I think is good because you're physically controlling something.
Well, it's analog. Pinball is analog.
It's so analog. It's on the cusp between video games and the old school games, But
now, Darthos in our chat room is bringing up something that is very dear to both Brian and myself. And when we come back from break, we'll talk a little bit about it. Stoner Flux. He's mentioning Stoner Flux there, so we'll have to talk a little bit.
Well, we will talk more about that.
Do you still have that deck copy of...
I think that John has
extra cards? I made a bunch of extra cards. We'll talk about those, too. We're having a nerd day here. You can tell because we got the Hubble Deep Field behind us. We're looking back to the beginning of the universe. Those little white specks are galaxies whose light has taken hundreds of thousands, millions of years.
We're all stardust, baby.
To get to us, man. And somewhere out there, they're smoking space weed. Talking about it just like we are.
Hey, they could be right above us smoking space weed.
You never know.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you don't just want any attorney. You want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Lauren Vasquez knows the details of California marijuana law from both a personal and professional angle. Lauren Vasquez rose from the ranks of college normal activist to become one of the Bay Area's best marijuana lawyers. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email firedupLawyer@gmail.com. The number again is 855-MMJ-LAWS, 855-665-5297 for your fired-up lawyer, Lauren Vasquez. Lauren Vasquez is an activist attorney you can trust. Call today. Hey, Tokers and Tokettes, Radical Russ here to introduce you to my friend Matt and all the staff at Lush LED Lighting. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED Lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. If you thought LEDs were... meet the tech of today. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Let's just say I appear at a lot of events with the masters of indoor horticulture, and the harvests I saw from Lush LED lighting were big, tight, sticky, and very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Double your rewards and lower your expenses with Lush LED lighting.
A moment of chance, buried in black, ink the pages with my blood, bound to die by hands of vengeance. A moment of chance, buried in black, ink the pages with my blood, bound to die by hands of vengeance.
Music from Kingdom of Sorrow. Welcome back, Toker Talk Radio. Got an unknown phone caller calling in. You're on the air with Toker Talk Radio. What's on your mind? Hello, caller. You're on the air. Yes. Hello, you're on the air. Go ahead. Yes. This is Radical Russ. You're on the air. All right. Thanks for calling in, Voodoo. All right. So
anyway, back to the gaming stuff. Yeah. So, somebody asked me if I met Alpha Omega Sin or somebody while I was there, and I don't know. I was busy volunteering all weekend. No, I was playing a little bit, but there was a couple of guests there. The local fully functional R2-D2 was there, and also the one of the Knight Riders kit. One of the kit cars was there.
That's awesome.
Yep, it was there all weekend. It was pretty badass. And then of course next to that, they had a display with 2 NES systems and the original Knight Rider cartridge game in it.
Well.
Yes. So.
Very nice. Glad to hear about that. All right. So, yeah, I had to take off the shirt, folks. I'm not going any further than that, but I had to take off the shirt because it was messing up with the, it looked like space was eating me.
Nom.
I couldn't take that. But I wanted to get back to yesterday on the show. We had covered Stephen Colbert, who did a great segment on America surrendering in the war on drugs. And in it, he talked about the Seattle Police Department and how they were giving away weed, giving away Doritos, at the event that had the information on what the law was. And of course, Stephen Colbert made a few jokes about it, like how the Doritos thing said, do listen to Dark Side of the Moon at a reasonable volume. And Colbert said, you can't listen to Dark Side of the Moon at a reasonable volume because then you'll miss the part where the song Money changes from 7/4 to 4/4 and Gilmore goes off on an amazing solo that's built on the pentatonic scale. So one of my assistants told me.
Oh, good Lord.
So this was the news yesterday, right, that came out that Stephen Colbert had done this thing, and now the Seattle Police Department has responded to Stephen Colbert. And, this is coming from the folks that have given us the Doritos post. So it's written pretty funny. It's very good. So I'll just read this for you now in Seattle Police Department voice. So give me just a moment here. An open letter to Stephen Colbert and Colbert Nation. Mr. Colbert and Colbert Nation, it has come to our attention that the Seattle Police Department was featured in a segment on your news program about marijuana enforcement in our great state, following the passage of Initiative 502. Unfortunately, this segment was rife with errors. Understandable given that your program airs during a late evening hour, typically the domain of infomercial watchers, graffiti vandals, and car prowlers. As such, we now believe it is necessary for our department to address some of the more egregious truthiness contained in your report, such as your assertion that America is surrendering in the war on drugs and that police in Seattle are encouraging drug use. We'll have you know, sir, that our department continues to pursue marijuana-related infractions, such as the sale of marijuana-infused snacks without a license. We've also made numerous attempts to better inform Seattle residents of the laws they voted for through our What Now? FAQ and HempFest outreach. We even had the foresight to do so in a way that captured our audience's attention before they went back to hashtagging their tweets and Instagramming their lunch. You also claimed our department has not done enough to keep medical-grade dispensary dank away from kids, and has failed to address the serious side effects of marijuana, such as short-term memory loss. We simply cannot remember a time we were more incensed by such a blatant mischaracterization of our department. We continue to investigate the sale of marijuana to minors, and we certainly do not encourage the use of silly branding like Bubba Kush and Alien Dog. If it were up to us, pot brands would have names like Remember to Call Your Mother and You Don't Want to Grow Up to Be a Drummer, Do You? You also indicated our educational material to HempFest attendees, instructing them to listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon at a reasonable volume, would impact their ability to appreciate guitarist David Gilmour's sixth solo based on the pentatonic scale. In fact, we were simply drawing HempFest attendees to the attention to the fact that they need not sustain any sort of auditory injury while embarking on Pink Floyd's seminal 43-minute psychedelic voyage through human existence. We sincerely hope this clarifies any confusion for you, Mr. Colbert, as to your final point, debating whether marijuana decriminalization will provide a much-needed tax revenue boost. We can confirm that Initiative 502 has been a boon for our local restaurant industry. Currently, you have to get on a 3-month-long waiting list now just to order a pizza. Your partner in anti-crime, the Seattle Police Department. I think it's cool that we've gotten to a point now where cops are joking about...
Cops can joke about it.
Can joke about weed, that it's legal, man. This is so wonderful. And, we get to tell stories like this, and then, I get done with the show and I get to read stories from all around the rest of the country where people don't have it quite as good. And I tell you, this weekend, I'm going to be doing some investigational research into a story coming out of Alabama. Our good friend Herb Thrasher has hit me into these mass arrests that they're doing in Alabama, just bulk arrests of marijuana consumers. And we're also going to take a look at the refusal to allow the Alabama Medical Marijuana Coalition to petition at local events to do their tabling, basically citing the fact that they're promoting medical marijuana legalization. And this is in a state where they don't have initiative petitioning to get on the ballot. They're just petitioning good old-fashioned petitioning. Like, hey, folks, let's sign a piece of paper that shows how we feel. And they're having a problem with that. And we want to know, just how deep does this go? How deep does this attempt to squash the rights, the First Amendment petitioning rights of citizens in Alabama, how far does it go? And what can we do to stop that? All right, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we will have more to talk about. In fact, we're going to go all the way to the country of Israel and kind of look at the behind-the-scenes politics that are going on there and how they are impacted by recent revelations of marijuana use by the opposition party leader. Also, later on in the show, time for a stupid prohibition story where a man on a bike runs into a cop and gets stupider from there. So stick around for that. But first, it's just about that time. That's right. It's 4:20 here in the Pacific time zone. We've got Stoney sitting in with us. Getting ready to get high.
420 in the how.
So we hope you have the chance to enjoy. Light them if you got them.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition. I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio.
Let him bring in the beat.
Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, The Russ Belville Show, Ganja John, and Cascadia Concentrates, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Adam's meticulous designs are individually crafted and screened in vibrant, high-definition color. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org.
Let him bring in the beat.
420radio.org presents our live original production of the New Viper Hour, celebrating the reefer jazz culture of the early 20th century. Live every Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific, with replays Tuesday at 10 a.m., Wednesdays at 3 a.m., and a 2-hour block Sundays at 2 a.m., right here on 420radio.org.
You're cut off! What can I say? You're cut off! I'm around play! You're cut off! All that I want! You're cut off! Searching more shot! Really freaking down this week! Someone tells me I can drink! They don't seem to really care what I want more! They don't really understand that it's a part of my big plan!
Municipal waste. You're cut off. That's some Herb Thrasher Flower Hour music, folks. If you dig that kind of metal, you want to tune in Friday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific time for the Flower Hour. 2 hours of the hardest rock and the hardest country, too.
Yeah, man.
It's really cool.
If it's fast, he'll play it.
If they're shredding, it's on the Flower Hour. Welcome back. It's Toker Talk Radio, where you are the voice of the Marijuana Nation. Our phone line is open at 971-533-7111. And for a moment here, I'm going to talk a little bit about this story that I reported earlier about the Israeli opposition leader, Shelly Yakimovich, who admitted to smoking pot. And this was like 16 years ago she smoked pot. She's 53 now. So what we're talking, 43, what is that? Minus 37 when she smoked pot? Okay, so she was a 37-year-old woman when she last smoked pot. She's 53 now. She is the opposition party leader. And she got into a little bit of a discussion on this. And we'll get to this in a second. We got a phone call coming in. Let's go to the phone lines here at 971-533-7111. You're on the air with Toker Talk Radio. Yeah, we're tired of you, Voodoo. Stop calling in. Stop trying to get in the chat room. It's really getting old, fella. Everybody is set to automatically ban you when you come in, and I'm not going to pick up any phone calls from unknown phone numbers, so give it a rest, pal. You're not affecting us one iota. We continue to be strong in fighting for marijuana legalization. I don't know what your trip is, but we've had about enough of it. Fortunately, we smoke a lot of weed, so we get over these things very quickly. But let me get back to this Yachimovich story, because it's very, very interesting. She kind of got into some wordplay here with one of her opposition. She said, quote, "Unlike others, I'm at peace with my past," she said in an interview. And that's kind of a swipe at the Israeli finance minister, Yair Lapid, who she says has a habit of forgetting details about his past. Lapid, he was asked earlier whether or not he smoked any marijuana, and he said, quote, "It wouldn't harm me politically if I said I smoked grass." It's cute that they still say grass. "But I didn't. I decided at a young age that I'm against it," end quote. So even in Israel here, as far as the politics goes, even the people that didn't smoke weed are saying, yeah, so what if I did? It's really no big deal. Kind of tells me that it's not going to be something that you can use politically against her in any sort of campaigns here. Now, Lapid used to be a media anchor, news anchor, and a socialite before taking up politics, and his vice apparently is cigars. Talks about how he likes to smoke cigars, which in some circles is worse for him than if he'd admitted that he smoked cannabis, because cigars are kind of associated with hedonism and corruption in Israeli society. So kind of an interesting dichotomy going on there. Cannabis is still listed as a dangerous drug in Israel. You can get it for medical purposes. In fact, probably the leading research that's going on in medicinal cannabis around the world now is happening in Israel. Patients have to obtain a permit from the government health authorities to use pot for medical purposes. They've tripled the number of permits in recent years, and Israeli health officials claim the country tops the European nations in medical distribution of cannabis. But patients claim that even with tripling the patient rolls, that the permits still fall way short of demand, who say they've got problems with the bureaucracy that's involved, and the fears that the occasional recreational user might abuse the system. So that even in Israel, folks, they have that patients versus criminals situation going on. There have been bills proposed in Israel to increase access to medical marijuana, but they still face an uphill battle. Legalization is apparently not on the agenda in Israel. And Yachimovich, for her part in this, says she herself does not advocate for legalization, but she does advocate for easing the restrictions currently faced in Israel on medical use. So there's a little update on what's happening in the country of Israel with regards to their marijuana politics. And Shelley Yachimovich is the first senior Israeli politician to admit to having smoked marijuana. So I guess she is the Bill Clinton of marijuana in Israel. They're about 20 years behind on the political radar on that issue. Very good, though. All right, we are going to take a little break, and when we come back, we've got the flux capacitor warming up here in the corner. Stick around. We're hanging out with Stoney, Brian the Red, and you in our chat room. Want to get involved in our chat room, there's a quick address you can go to, rad-r.us/420chatroom. Snap's in there as match one. Become part of the community today. You can network and learn from everybody involved and pass around the knowledge. That's what we're about here at 420 Radio.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, home of the famous lighter leash. Herb Age Designs, get your Herb Age t-shirts and hoodies and show your pride. Herb Age Designs, we've got frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter. We'll see you at this year's Hemp Fest. Crank it up.
Who would you rather your kids talk to about drugs? You? Or some guy? When your kids find out you've been lying to them about marijuana, who will they trust? Let's have a rational discussion about drug reform. Let's tax and regulate marijuana, restrict youth access, and create safer communities.
High as a kite.
Smoking dope. Yeah, smoke weed, bro. Way up here in Lindo.
That's music from the High Grade All-Stars with Smoke Weed Every Day, part of our Groovin' Thursday Daily Toker Tunes. If you dig the tunes that we're playing on our Daily Toker Tunes, we got a different genre every day, Monday through Friday, and the latest tune will be posted at 420radio.org. But there's a catch. You gotta be a VIP member to see the posts. VIPs can subscribe to the podcast, download this great music new every weekday at 4:20 Pacific time. Available for VIP members. Become a VIP member by logging on to 420radio.org/donate today. We are listener-supported cannabis community radio. We can't do it without you. Thank you for your support. We turn now to the flux capacitor, which is warming up for another report from our stupid prohibition stories.
Stupid prohibition stories. As a public service, the Russ Belville Show reminds you that smoking marijuana does not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana, and prohibition is always waiting for another victim. Learn your lesson from today's stupid prohibition stories.
With your stupid prohibition stories, I'm old-timey 1920s radio reporter Freddie Farrock. This just in from Chattanooga, Tennessee's WRCB. Man on bike crashes into cop, offers him marijuana. Athens, Tennessee. A man on a bicycle was arrested Monday after he collided with a McMinn County deputy and then offered her drugs. Athens police arrested Gerald Edwards Monday night. He's charged with public intoxication. Edwards hit the deputy with his bicycle, then failed a field sobriety test after the officer noticed his slurred speech and glossy eyes. Edwards admitted that he'd been drinking and then invited the deputy to smoke marijuana with him. Police say he was very belligerent and aggressive in transport to jail. Edwards is being held on a $500 bond. I'm Freddie Farrock with your stupid prohibition stories.
I'm gonna say it again. Alcohol bad, especially out in public. If you're gonna drink, do it at home, right next to your bed.
That's hard drug, man.
That's what I do. Yeah, I leave the hard drugs to nighttime. At home, you know, it's like I'm alone, so nobody I can hurt. You know,
Although I got to say, the WRCB staff needs to work on their headline because it says crashes into cop, offers him marijuana. It was a female cop he crashed into.
Wow.
Offers her marijuana.
Maybe they were stoned.
I don't know. Freddie always reads his stories verbatim.
And look, it was even updated once.
Yeah. Yeah, updated at 8 this morning. Happened last night after 11. So, yeah. So, let's do, of course, the teachable moment here.
Okay.
You don't admit to the cop anything.
Yeah, well, he failed the sobriety test, so obviously he was beyond drunk.
On his bike.
Ran into a freaking cop and was like, "Hey man, it's cool. Hey, do you want to smoke some weed with me? It's alright. It'll be alright.
Come on back to my place.
Okay, yeah, it's cool. We'll go in the back of your car or hotbox the cop car. It'll be cool." No, I've known people who get that drunk, so that's,
That's what we're stuck with. Yes, thank you so much. Oh,
yay, alcohol.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Toker Talk Radio, where you are the voice of the Marijuana Nation, and checking up on the stories out there. Love the Colbert Nation piece. We played it yesterday for you. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, it's available through colbertnation.com. So you can log on and get more information on that, and also watch the entire piece. Wanted to talk a little bit about this drug test lab case that we've been following. The Massachusetts Supreme Court is going to be hearing these challenges by prosecutors who are very upset because this state crime lab technician, Annie Dukin, was in charge for years. I think it was 9 years, but I may be wrong on the dates. But she was in charge for a long time. And it was discovered that she'd been faking test results and mishandling evidence in other tests and swapping evidence and all sorts of
and this is just another reason why I don't like applying for jobs that require any kind of piss test, because even if I spend the time to get clean, which ain't happening, they could say, "Oh, you're positive for all this shit," and that's not cool.
Mm-hmm. And how often is that being used to discriminate against someone they otherwise couldn't legally discriminate against?
Yeah.
For whatever reason. That's the thing about drug testing that bothers me, is how, a lot of companies are drug testing for everyone who applies, but once you've got the job, there's that so-called random testing.
Random, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, she falsified drug tests, she falsified drug samples, and so the prosecutors are upset because this has called into question thousands of convictions in Massachusetts. The people who are busted, fail a drug test and you're thrown back in jail for your probation. Well, now it's a question of, did I really fail the drug test or did she fake it? Once she's, and what they're saying, these prosecutors are saying, look, just because she faked a bunch doesn't mean she faked all of them. So all of the people that are wanting to get out should have to prove that their tests are some of the ones she faked. Now, that's a really steep burden of proof for the victim in these situations, to have to prove their innocence.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other side, the defense side, is saying, well, not only should we throw out any tests that she was involved with, we should throw out any case that was convicted from the entire damn lab. Fruit of the poison tree kind of thing. It's like, once you've got, a rat, right? You don't, you don't keep the whole system going there. You never know what she might have been involved with. If we've got someone who's knowingly faking drug test sample results for her own cases, who's to say that she's not, trying to change other people's cases when they're not aware of what's going on? So somewhere in that spectrum of throwing out every single case that lab ever participated in while she was working there, to only throwing out the cases of the people who can prove that she was involved in their case, that's what the Massachusetts Supreme Court is up against right now. And it further highlights to me what I think is just a travesty in general, and that is this rampant use of drug testing, this reliance on drug testing, to try to solve crimes and to try to discipline people. You know, there's this tendency in America now, having been indoctrinated on hours and hours of CSIs and NCISs and other alphabet-lettered TV shows, crime procedurals, to have this deification of the crime lab and this belief that, you know, once we've got the DNA evidence, it's incontrovertible evidence. Well, the science of DNA is incontrovertible. You give me one sample from me and another sample from me, and you can show that they match DNA-wise. The question is, how did that sample get there? It's a question that goes all the way back to the O.J. Simpson trial, if I'm not mistaken. The idea of evidence being planted to frame someone, guilty or not, but evidence being planted to frame someone, right? So that's why this over-reliance on drug testing and this societal belief in it as being incontrovertible is dangerous to justice and dangerous to our society, when the drug testing itself and the guilt itself from being convicted of having cannabis or whatever other drug is such an effective way of circumventing a lot of our constitutional protections, of being able to discriminate against someone who maybe you don't like the way they look or what they believe or who they are, and you know legally you can't get away with discriminating them for that reason. But, you know, if you roll the dice and try a drug test on them, you might just pick up something they might have been doing a week or two ago. And that'll give you the reason you need to be able to fire them or to get rid of them or to evict them or whatever it is you need to do. Mm-hmm. Something that you wouldn't be able to do if they'd been enjoying a beer or smoking a cigarette. And that's all we're really looking for here, is some equality. To be able to live our lives. We don't want any special rights for people that are smoking pot. I'm not one of these people that thinks we should be able to smoke pot openly walking down the street smoking joints. I think it should be as restricted or not restricted as cigarette smoking. You can't make a case for me about why pot smoke would be offensive where cigarette smoke would not be offensive, or vice versa. I'm willing to live by the same restrictions a cigarette smoker lives by. I'm willing to live with the same public use restrictions a drinker has to live by. Now, in Las Vegas, Nevada, they can walk around with drinks in their hands. So, in Las Vegas, Nevada, I want to be able to smoke a joint while I'm walking down the strip. I understand that some counties in Kansas are still dry counties. I'd be fine with it being a dry marijuana county in Kansas, too. Just treat us equally. That's what I'm looking for. All right, we're going to take a break. Come back with our last segment right after this.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
What makes something funny? How does humor impact health and psychological well-being? How can you incorporate humor into everyday life? A concise, reader-friendly introduction to an important but often underappreciated topic in modern psychology, Humor 101 explains the role of comedy, jokes, and wit in the sciences and discusses why they are so important to understand. Psychology professor Dr. Mitch Earlywine draws from his personal experiences in stand-up comedy to focus on how humor can regulate emotion, reduce anxiety, and diffuse tense situations, expose pretensions, build personal relationships, and much more. He irreverently debunks the pseudoscience on the topic of humor and leaves readers not only funnier, but better informed. It's part of the Psych 101 series from Springer Publishing, Humor 101 by Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D.
Funky roller ring.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening, Groovy Cats? This is your Funk Master of Ceremonies, Big Daddy. And I want you to join me every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here at the Funky Roller Ring.
Oh, yeah.
Your home of soul, funk, and disco, baby.
Funky-licious.
There's always a party at the Funky Roller Ring.
Ever wonder how often to change your bong water? The most effective method for baking pot brownies? The best destinations for a ganja getaway? How to hide herb in your car? Whether to grow your own? How precisely to legalize it? Or how something as wonderful as marijuana ever got to be illegal in the first place? Finally, you can find all these answers and much more in the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook, featuring 420 things to do when you're stoned. Since 1974, High Times magazine has covered marijuana in all its aspects and wonders, from cultivation to legalization to the herb's enduring and exalted place in popular culture. Packed with inside information, the official High Times Pot Smoker's Handbook rolls all of this collected wisdom together into a single indispensable ganja guide, including an entertaining look at marijuana's history, profiles of herb-friendly travel destinations and festivals, favorite potluck recipes from the High Times staff, smoking skills, advocacy and activism, essential marijuana movies and songs, profiles of famous cannabis strains, comprehensive growing information, celebrity endorsements, and much more. This is truly, finally, the ultimate...
Is smoking pot a crime? Is it time to end the war on marijuana? We'll be now Neil Franklin, retired State Police Major and Executive Director of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, or LEAP, and also with us David Evans, a criminal defense attorney and special advisor to Drug-Free America Coalition. Let me start with you, Neil. You're the head of a group of law enforcement officers who want to stop the war on drugs. What is the reality of that war?
The reality of that war is very, very dangerous communities, and it's a nightmare for law enforcement. We have thousands of murders across this country every single year. We talk about the numbers of murders that we have in Mexico, but no one's really talking about the murders that we have here in our country. Back in 2009, journalists and I estimated that number on the low end to be over 6,500 murders that are the result of drug prohibition policies in our own country, right in our own backyard. So let's reduce the violence that we have in our communities, stop filling up our jails. Our jails are not institutions of higher learning. These folks go to prison, they come back out into the community, can't get jobs, but the drug trade will hire them back into a violent cycle again.
So David Evans, I mean, you know, that's all undeniably true, and yet you would wish to continue to criminalize marijuana. Why?
Well, Pierce, first of all, it's not undeniably true. There's a lot of false statements in what LEAP has said. Legalizing drugs is a very naive approach. It's simplistic, and it just simply isn't going to work if we look at the experience in other countries. I say it's naive because what's going to happen if you legalize drugs, and especially if you legalize marijuana, that all the commercial interests are going to come into play. It's not just about legalizing it so you can have a joint at home in the privacy of your home. It's going to become a big industry, and they're going to focus on our young people just like alcohol and tobacco focuses on young people, because they know if they can get them hooked, they're going to have customers the rest of their lives.
Yeah, but you see, okay, let me jump in.
Let me jump in. It's absolutely untrue.
Okay, no. Yeah. You wait a minute. Let me just jump in.
Okay.
My response to that would be, well, yeah, but the point of the debate is it any more harmful, marijuana, than tobacco or alcohol? And most of the scientific evidence suggests that it's no more harmful, in which case you may not like the fact that people can buy and smoke cigarettes or buy and drink alcohol, but it's perfectly legal. It's now perfectly legal to do the same with cannabis in at least 2 states, and many more are following. If it's no more harmful, that is the only reason that I can see that you would have this whole debate in the first place. If it's no more harmful, why not legalize it?
Pierce, you're very poorly informed on the dangers of marijuana. Marijuana combines the worst aspects of tobacco and the worst aspects of alcohol. It is mind-altering. It is addictive. We now see kids coming into college with higher rates of marijuana dependence than alcohol dependence. The problem is the public perception of marijuana has not caught up with the recent science. If people looked at the recent science, they would see marijuana has more carcinogenic properties than does tobacco. In fact, the state of California, Department of Environmental Protection, has declared marijuana smoke to be a carcinogen. It is involved in drug driving. You talk about deaths from the cartels. Well, in California now, drug driving is surpassing drunk driving, so we're going to have more deaths on the highways. Most of those people are going to be young people that are going to be dying.
And you're painting a very apocalyptic picture here, Mr. Evans. I mean, have you ever taken marijuana yourself?
Yes, I smoked pot in college, of course. I went through college.
And you're still alive? You haven't killed anyone? You haven't gone crazy? You seem perfectly well. You seem reasonably rational.
But marijuana back then was a relatively benign substance compared to the way it is today. Today it is highly addictive. The THC in marijuana is a lot higher. because it's been bred.
But that is exactly. But surely that is exactly right. But that is exactly the argument as to why you should legalize it, because there is so much stronger stuff on the streets. The best way to deal with this, surely, is to legalize it, control it, prescribe it, and as these mothers showed me earlier, in small doses, it can enhance people's lives, not ruin it.
You're not going to be able to control the amount of THC that's in a substance. And if people want a stronger THC, they're just going to go to the black market anyway. You need to look at what's been done in Europe. In Great Britain, they've now reversed their marijuana policy. They decriminalized it. They've now recriminalized it because they had so many problems with kids going into mental institutions because of high-potency marijuana. The Netherlands has also now reversed their policy and have now made high-potency marijuana on the same level as heroin and cocaine.
Okay, let me bring back Neil Franklin. Neil, your reaction to all this?
If I think most of your listeners know that the information that Mr. Evans has given us right now is false. But even if it were true, I ask this question: why would we continue to support the policy that is causing all of the problems that Mr. Evans is referring to? But why would we continue to support a policy that puts more drug dealers on our street corners who are not regulated or controlled? They hire kids to sell marijuana and other drugs to kids. There's a reason they call them pushers, because they push drugs on people. When you go to them for marijuana, they will push other drugs on people. It's the environment that's more dangerous than anything else for our young people. So it's not only dangerous for them because more drugs, deadly drugs, are potentially available for them because of unregulated, uncontrolled, no quality control measures, but our streets have become very violent. Tools of the trade are guns. That's why we have high gun violence in our country today. The vast majority of the murders on our streets by guns are directly related to drug prohibition. This is what I'm talking about.
Had to play that video for you. That's Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, Neil Franklin on the Piers Morgan Show, being filibustered by David Evans from the Drug Free America Foundation, who is spouting, plenty of reefer madness. And I don't even want to get into debunking the reefer madness because it's, you listeners should have this stuff down by now. But the thing I wanted to get to is what Neil Franklin got to. And it's something that Paul Armentano has alluded to in the past as well. Let's take all of their scares about marijuana at face value. If everything they said about marijuana was true, it would argue even more strongly for legalizing the substance. We legalized the two worst drugs. We legalized alcohol and tobacco. Of all of the recreational substances out there, tobacco, nicotine, cigarettes have the highest addictive potential. 32%, according to the National Institutes on Drug Abuse, 32% of the people who try a smoke are going to be hooked. That's compared to 23% for cocaine, 17%, 23% for heroin. That's right, 23% for heroin, 17% for cocaine, 15% for alcohol, and 9% for cannabis, caffeine, and benzodiazepines. And the number doesn't even really exist for acid and mushrooms and most hallucinogens because they really don't have addictive potential in the classic definition of addictive. So we got the most addictive substance, tobacco, and, by the way, the most deadly as far as how many people it kills and how much harm it causes socially, and then how much cost we have to put up with it. And I always think there's hidden costs in tobacco smoking that don't get much accounted for. For example, at almost any place I ever worked, tobacco smokers would take that break every couple of hours and go outside for 15 or 20 minutes. And they want to talk to me about the pot smokers causing a loss of productivity.
Yeah.
All right. So there's that aspect of it. Let's not even talk about that. So we legalize this drug that's super addictive, that's costful to society, that's harmful to the user, and you can get it when you're 18 or 19 years old, depending on your state.
Wow.
And we also legalized alcohol, that is the most societally damaging of all the drugs involved. Now, I know a lot of people want to characterize, oh no, meth, and they're going to, rip stuff off of bridges, which does happen. And oh no, heroin junkies are going to steal stuff, which does happen. But the extent to which it happens in proportion to how many people are actually using these drugs is actually very, very low percentage. Most people don't commit crimes even when they use drugs, folks. Nevertheless, we keep on criminalizing the users of marijuana, and we continue to force them into this underground market when we have such a clear way of changing this situation. And if every assumption of these drug warriors about marijuana were true, it would argue greater for regulating it. As I said, we regulated tobacco. We've gotten 1/3 fewer kids since I was in high school. 1/3 fewer high school seniors have tried a cigarette. It was over 70, it's about 69% when I was in high school. 1985 was when I graduated. And it was higher before that. It was in the 70% in the 1970s. And now 40%, 39% in the most recent survey, actually. 39% of high school seniors have tried a cigarette. We've got a full third of high school seniors to not even take up smoking. And yet it's the most addictive. It's legal. You can get it from age 18 or 19. And there's companies, the big tobacco companies, hell-bent on making sure they hook those users early. And yet somehow we got 1/3 of the kids to not even try it. And we've got this drug alcohol, the most societally damaging of the drugs. And it's ubiquitous. It's advertised everywhere. Its commercials are looked forward to every Super Bowl Sunday. We can't wait. In fact, we preview the damn commercials. We can't wait to see what the latest beer commercial would be. No drug is more glamorously advertised in this society than alcohol is. And yet, when I was in high school, over 90% of my classmates had tried alcohol. Now it's about 70. How in the world did we get about a quarter? Actually, the late 1970s was like 93%, and now it's down to like 70-something. 69, that's right. How do we get almost a quarter of high school seniors to not even try alcohol when it's so available? It's in stores everywhere. It's not hard to get someone to buy it for you. Lots of kids do it. But how did we get a quarter to not try drinking? So if you want to play this argument about how harmful the marijuana is now, and it's so, of course I smoked in college, but it wasn't really marijuana. This is not your father's Woodstock weed these days. Right. Yeah, nobody back in the 60s and 70s was smoking marijuana that was any good. I mean, look at their clothes, look at their art, listen to their music. Those are people that weren't smoking any very, very good weed, were they? Give me a break. Any of these arguments, and I think William F. Buckley Jr. was the one that said, even if you take all of the reefer madness allegations of the prohibitionists at face value, they wouldn't compare to the damage that's done by the prohibition. I mangled the quote, I'm sure, but that was the basic sentiment of it. So don't get lost when these prohibitionists start to argue all these supposed new scientific harms from marijuana. If you face that in a debate, Neil Franklin just gave you the perfect pivot. Let's say all the things you say bad about marijuana are true. Doesn't that argue for more regulation and control? And I always like to put it this way. Why are we giving this huge market to criminals? Why are we letting that be unregulated, untaxed, and run by criminals? Why? We're just trying to say, let's see that marijuana sales and cultivation is not a crime. Let's take the crime out of it. It's obvious it's always going to be here. It's always been here. It will always be here. People will always be smoking pot. We can all acknowledge on both sides that this will always exist, so why not try to control it and regulate it? 40 years of prohibition has not worked. That's all the time I got for today. For Brian the Red, Stoney, and Snap, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you